What if I told you there was a way that your house could pay you to live there? Well, there is, especially since they've changed the laws in California, making ADUs even more attainable. If you want to learn how to do that and build an ADU on your home, you're going to want to watch this episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Happy House Hacking Podcast, the podcast designed to help young people in California navigate the path to happy home ownership. I am your host, Owen Schwaegerle. I am a local real estate investor, real estate broker, and happy house hacker. And on today's episode, we have Chris Allen, local architect, who's actually helped us build an ADU, going to be having a conversation about ADUs and architecture and how to develop your next project. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. Local to San Luis, architect. Actually went to Cal Poly, one of the universities here, and pursued architecture. Was able to get a career in architecture and have successfully developed a business. A lot to do with the fact that ADUs are a part of our world. So, yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, so ADUs are kind of a hot topic in California. Can you share maybe a little bit of the history of why ADUs are so popular right now?
Dating back to around 2016, the state of California was recognizing that there was a housing shortage. And so they came up with a handful of strategies, some of which were successful, some of which were not. One of those strategies was actually to implement a means in which homeowners could leverage underdeveloped property with the use of an accessory dwelling unit. And so 2016, there came about a law that was put into place that allowed homeowners to take advantage of spaces, whether they were detached, attached, or part of the original home, to develop additional housing units. And this was the state's way of incentivizing the ability for homeowners to be able to take advantage and potentially provide additional income to homes that otherwise may have been limited based on previous code. In 2019, that was amended and certain aspects were changed, which actually incentivized even more the ability for people to develop ADUs on their properties. So the purpose obviously was to increase housing stock, and the resultant has been less effective in terms of satisfying housing demand, but has been incredibly advantageous for the people who have been able to take advantage of it thus far for the purposes of income and development and potential development. So I think from an investment standpoint, there is huge potential with the aspect of ADUs being a part of the conversation.
Okay. Wow. So in California, we had single family zoning, and for a long time, that was kind of like a hindrance to people being able to put an additional unit. But now statewide, they've changed those rules. So it sounds like it's easier to develop those types of properties.
Exactly. So the ADU law, as it stands from a state perspective, allows homeowners to develop up to 1,200 square feet of additional space as a separate unit on their properties. Now, jurisdictions throughout the state have been able to modify those recommendations to be specific to their intended purpose, like neighborhoods that really don't mend well with a 1,200 square foot addition to some houses have limitations to that. It has a still minimum of 800 square feet. So you can't stipulate that an ADU can be built, but have it be required to be less than 800 square feet. So locally in the San Luis area, we have both the county and the city, and they have differing ordinances with regards to stipulations about square footage. The city of San Luis has an avenue by right that a homeowner could build up to 1,000 square feet. That doesn't mean they aren't allowed to build up to 1,200 based on state law, but there's a secondary process that comes into play. County-wise, 1,200 is the square footage that everybody is applied to, and so that's just how that limitation works.
Okay. So in the audience, most people following are young people in California who want to get into home ownership. So why would a young person consider building an ADU on a property as, a first-time home buyer?
Yeah. So as I said previously, it's really a means of leveraging underdeveloped property. So if a homeowner is looking at a potential property and notices that, for instance, their necessity for a garage might not be the same as someone else's, they could look at that garage as an opportunity. And I should probably preface by saying that there are a multitude of different ways that an ADU can be approached. One is it's a freestanding structure in a backyard or a freestanding structure somewhere else on the property. Inversely, attached. It could be attached to the original home footprint, but is not intended to be part of the original footprint, meaning you're attaching an additional structure to it. Addition to existing interior square footage, a little bit of a blend, but really I think the most cost advantageous approach is actually to take existing space and convert it into something that can be leveraged as a rental or used as caretaker space, whatever it might be. So if a property owner is or a potential buyer is looking at property, noticing what areas of the original home might be leveraged for the purposes of an ADU so as to generate rental income really is, I think, a great perspective to have. And I think real estate agents need to be aware of how that potential plays in. The price, the capability of that buyer being able to afford what their mortgage will be. And so garages, bonus rooms, those kinds of things really end up being advantageous to be able to leverage once a purchase is made. There are stipulations with all different ways of approaching the ADU, but I would say the most cost advantageous and potential return on investment is absolutely a garage
and maybe a basement too.
Basement, bonus room, things that have a shell that are not a hindrance to being able to convert. And when I say convert, a freestanding unit, an ADU, has to have a restroom and a kitchen independently provided as part of the amenity package for that unit. Now, there's a nuance as well, which is a different term to just explicitly ADU, which is junior ADU. And a junior ADU is limited to 450 square feet, but it's also able to take advantage of existing spaces. For instance, a bedroom. An existing bedroom can actually now become a legal junior ADU. And so if we're talking about converting a bedroom into a rental space, you're already satisfying a lot of usual code requirements, specifically egress, access to a bathroom, that kind of stuff. So it ends up being a little bit of a benefit from a procedural standpoint, but maybe a negative in terms of its integration into the home, meaning it becomes an awkward moment.
Could the JADU be like a master suite that has its own separate entrance, and then you add a kitchen, so now it's like its full own
and that's
unit?
A great example. I think that the best case for a junior ADU is you've got a home with a layout that does have an obvious freestanding master suite that all you'd have to do from a cost perspective is add the amenity of the kitchen. And now you've got a freestanding unit that has all the features that really are.
Wow.
The one nuance to that is that an independent heating source can potentially be problematic if it ends up that somebody likes part of the house being really cold and somebody likes it really hot. You may have to add some amenities.
Like a mini split or something? Okay. So, Chris, why would someone want an architect for this? Like, can I just do this myself, draw up the plans, take it down to the city or the county and get it approved? Like, why bring an architect in?
Yeah. I think that really boils down to experience. I think if a homeowner has the experience of having done something similar, they may be prepared for the process and have relationships in place that would facilitate kind of the expediency needed for low-cost development. But the reality is architects provide a service, and that service is intended to expedite the flow and process of conversions, additions, development in general. And without those relationships, homeowners can walk into a building department and really be hit with a little bit of a brick wall. So architects have the ability to help facilitate, at the end of the day, that process from start to finish, whether it's the design, the initial concept generation, all the way through questions coming from your contractor of how does this get built? A homeowner could find themselves in a little bit of a deep water situation, whereas the architect has typically already seen a lot of those questions and have been able to answer them.
Yeah, I know in our experience, we closed on this home in November, and then we brought you on as an architect to help design a garage conversion for our ADU, and you had the plan submitted by December. So it was a 1-month turn time. And I remember you also said that, hey, we need to get these plans submitted this year because if we don't do it before January 1st next year, there's going to be a new requirement. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, and navigating
code, yeah.
The reality is we don't expect the typical homeowner to have read or be knowledgeable to the degree that an architect is with regards to code and just conformance with jurisdictional requirements. And so I think navigating that whole realm really is advantageous to bring on a professional. But again, there are instances in which homeowners have seen and dealt with a lot of that in their professional career.
Right.
Maybe they are prepared, but my recommendation would always be to hire a professional just for the expediency perspective and just navigating the whole process.
What was it? Was it for like a battery, like a solar battery or something? There was like a new development. The code for California came out, making it a little bit more expensive, and it would have cost us a couple $1,000 more.
Yeah, and it happens both jurisdictionally as well as within the state. The state has requirements that come into play every code cycle, and the code changes every 3 years. So every time we see a code cycle update, there ends up being more stipulations added to a project. And so either being prepared or knowledgeable about what those changes are going to be makes it so that the homeowner throughout a process doesn't find themselves all of a sudden being hit blindsided by new information that's coming into the fold. So that being said, there's also just jurisdictionally things that are different from city to city that, somebody coming to the area who is purchasing in a new area may be completely unaware of what they're getting themselves into, whereas hiring an architect from that jurisdiction could absolutely clear the path.
Totally. Yeah, I really appreciated how fast it was getting you in there to submit the plans. And then we also got some revisions. The city said, oh, you needed to fix a few things. And I liked how quick you were at doing those revisions and resubmitting the documents, and then like walking us through the rest of the code and the permit process.
Yeah. So, and that's not atypical. I think procedurally, the process really ends up being this. You, as an architect, I would meet with a client. The client would give me an understanding of what their approach or what their objectives are, and we develop a plan from that. We then would submit those plans to the jurisdiction. In the case here, it's the city of St. Louis. They have an opportunity to review those plans for code compliance as well as conformance with their own jurisdictional requirements, and they will provide feedback. If they find that there's discrepancy or a need of clarification, they'll request that as part of the process, and then we respond. That response inevitably will result in you having a permit to then hand to a contractor, or if you are coordinating with a contractor concurrently to that, it could be that you immediately pull the permit and are able to give it to your contractor to proceed.
So are there any local requirements that, are here, San Luis Obispo City or county, that if someone's going to be building an ADU on their property, they should be aware of or know about?
Yeah. And this is where costs come into play, and being aware of what costs to expect is very important. And having an architect who's dealt with those strategies to either mitigate that cost or be able to navigate through them. One such requirement with regards to the city of San Luis is called the Sewer Lateral Offset Program. And it was implemented in I want to say 2019, 2020, which necessitated that projects that included the addition of a plumbing fixture to a property necessitated that a review be done of the existing sewer lateral for its conformance, as well as the potential for you to be required to also replace someone else's. And it seems illogical to suggest that you would be replacing somebody else's property, but the reality is that was a requirement that was imposed on potential development in the city of San Luis. And there have been nuances to that program where if you stay under a certain square footage, you're able to alleviate that requirement from your project. And so garage conversions are a great example where a freestanding ADU that exceeds a certain square footage may require to be a part of that program. Whereas the garage conversion, being that garages are typically under the threshold for that square footage, would not be actually required to participate. So that's one kind of nuance requirement. The other one is school fees. And in fact, just jurisdictional fees that are charged for most housing projects, impact fees, road fees. those are all actually exempt to a degree if you are proposing an ADU. And that was part of the state law that was put into place. So understanding those thresholds, understanding what requirements would have to be put in place in order to mitigate cost, especially on the front end for a homeowner who's looking at adding potential rental value to their property without the impact fees associated to the initial construction cost, is advantageous no matter what. Now, we all understand that there's costs associated to building in California. It's just inevitable. But any way that we can bring down that initial investment cost is a benefit.
Okay. So what about, how do people do this? Like, do they pay for it cash? Do they finance it? Do they get a line of credit, a construction loan? Have you had experience on how people go about building out an ADU if they wanted to do it?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to budget too, because the reality is a garage conversion isn't going to cost as much as a freestanding structure in your backyard. So if we're looking at price points, the general consensus as of late for a garage conversion seems to span between $80,000 and $100,000. I mean, that's the reality of building in California. But adding a kitchen, adding a bathroom, new finishes throughout, it ends up being a costly endeavor. Now, that $80,000 could quickly pay for itself if what you are generating from a rental perspective is, $2,000 a month from that conversion. So the reality is it is an investment, but it comes with the benefit of income in perpetuity. From a how do we pay for it perspective, the inverse to that is a freestanding ADU in your backyard might be a $400,000 investment inversely.
Wow.
And $400,000 is not something that you would find most first-time home buyers being like, oh, let's go to Chase and pick up our $400,000 and pay for it. So there needs to be construction lending in most cases with that degree of construction. As for other alternatives, Cal HFA, they had a program where up to, I believe, $40,000 was available for homeowners to pay for some of the front end costs. It wasn't part of the construction per se, but it would pay for an architect's fees, getting all the evaluations done on a property to be able to actually propose a project. Whether that program is still in effect or if there's funding available, I would say I'm unsure. But there are ways to source funds that help facilitate, especially the first-time homebuyer front, to be able to afford housing.
Yeah. I know one program, FHA 203 construction loans, where first-time home buyers can take advantage of getting financing to build. And they recently changed it where you can actually build ADUs. And so they'll even give you 50% of the income on the estimate of what the ADU will be, even if it's not constructed yet. So when you're looking at property, you could be looking for something that has a basement or attic or garage that you can convert. And then as long as you've got the right team in place, you can make an offer and then build out the construction of the ADU after you close escrow and then use that income to help you qualify.
Yeah. And that's a huge boost in the direction of being able to afford front end costs. So that makes all the sense to pursue something.
So then let's talk about return on investment. So if I'm going to be, building an ADU with, $100,000 of costs, what could that do to the equity in the home? Do you think it would be a dollar for dollar, or do you think it would be a higher rate of return on the investment?
I think the answer to that really lies in what the purpose of the ADU is. We've done a handful of ADUs that have been specifically built for the grandma who needs a place to live closer to family. The rental value of that in comparison to an ADU that has multiple bedrooms that's intended to house multiple paying individuals can result in a pretty wide spread. For example, we have done a handful of projects where a freestanding ADU has 4 bedrooms. And it sounds crazy to think that 1,000 or 1,200 square foot structure would house 4 bedrooms, but that's the reality. You can easily fit that and have it be a true amenity for the people who want a place to live, either close to a convenient location where they visit often, aka university or town. 4 bedrooms at 12 to 1,500 a month per bedroom results in a lot of income in comparison to what that initial investment may be. Return on investment. I would say any way that you can leverage an existing property that you are living in, that you consider your home, or an investment property that you are generating income from, is a benefit to further leverage as rental income and rental prices increase. So I don't think there's any fault in somebody pursuing ADUs as a means of providing a source of income and a return on that investment. Whether it's a proportionate investment and return is dependent explicitly on the number of actual bedrooms, to be honest. I think that the bedroom count is the trigger for determining whether or not an investment is really going to pay off. So if you build 1,000 square foot ADU and there's 1 bedroom, you might have a beautiful structure and a beautiful, cool, creative thing, but at the end of the day, you're not going to get the rental income back that you would.
Totally. I know we had the option of doing a 1-bedroom studio or 2-bedroom, and we opted for the 2-bedroom option for our place here. And the beauty of it is that is now helping cover half our mortgage. So even though mortgages are expensive, they're in the 7% interest rates right now. If you're a young person in California looking for a way to creatively offset that expense, building an ADU, converting an existing structure to an ADU can be a great way to make it more affordable.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, is there anything else you can share with the audience, first-time home buyers or maybe property owners that maybe they wouldn't know of or think of when it comes to ADUs that might get them excited about exploring that option?
Yeah, I mean, the end result is that California understood there's a limitation on housing. And this was one way of going about satisfying that by leveraging property owners pursuing this without there being state input. They put in a regulation that allows for a little more flexibility. Well, to add to that, and just not to deviate a lot from the conversation, they've subsequently issued another state bill called SB 9. And SB 9 actually is a little bit like the ADU ordinance, but on steroids. It allows, in fact, property owners on single-family lots to not only keep their single-family home and add an ADU to that, but they now are actually allowed to either subdivide or take another path, which is you can build another primary residence and another ADU on that same property. So again, not to deviate too significantly from ADUs, there are ways in which property owners can look from an investment perspective at SB 9 as an avenue towards densifying existing single-family homes on single-family lots with technically 4 residences.
Wow.
So it is a potential for additional rental income above and beyond what we have right now.
So let's say there's a larger property, maybe like half acre or something like that. It's got a house on it now. I could buy that property, put an ADU on it, subdivide it, put a house and another ADU on it, and then maybe sell that other parcel and then pay off the mortgage.
Absolutely.
And be...
In fact, there's another path, which is you have that same half acre
and
you just elect to subdivide it, show that there's evidence of a secondary parcel, and sell that parcel freestanding without paying any development on it. The great thing about that path is your cost from the purchase to the point in which you're selling off a portion of that property is only the cost of the mapping, meaning this is what the subdivision looks like. I don't need to pay for the construction.
Wow.
And so if the resultant value of that land that you just sold is a significant portion of what your purchase price was, you're now looking at a much less costly investment, especially front end, without having to go down the road of construction.
In San Luis Obispo, lots are trading for like $300,000 to $600,000 just for the raw land.
Yep, exactly.
That'd be a very easy way to help recoup some of your capital on that acquisition.
Exactly. I think the state recognizes that there are a lot of those kind of, and granted, half-acre lots in a downtown urban area is uncommon, but but what's great about this program is it actually is in some ways unlimited as to how small of a lot you can get. So you can actually create a 1,500 square foot lot now.
Wow.
So whereas previously lot size limitation in the city of San Luis was minimum of 6,000. So even if you have a 6,000 square foot lot, you can now subdivide that and break it down into 2 lots and
Wow.
still be in compliance.
Wow. And is that something you help people with?
Yeah. We've done a couple of them in the city. The reality is a lot of the effort is actually done by surveyors.
Okay.
Surveyors are the ones who create the map. They're the ones who determine, where a lot line would be placed. And so we help facilitate that process, but they're the ones who really carry the big weight.
Awesome. Well, Chris, we want to say thank you so much for coming on today. Chris Allen is a local architect. We are going to share his contact information in the show notes. If you're interested in having a consultation and learning more about developing an ADU or doing an improvement to your property, he is here to help. So, Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. And please like, follow, subscribe, and share this podcast episode with someone you think who may find some value out of it. And thank you so much, Happy House Hackers. We'll catch you next time.